Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Friday, the 4th of September 2020. And what are we doing? We're here on Race Room. It's Friday night racing. And we are in race 4 of 4. My name's Beanster, and I'll be taking you through tonight's action as we close out this short series, single car race series. We're in the AMGs from about 1995. Beasts of cars. Fantastic driving we've had through the whole of this competition. Seemed to come to a pinnacle last week with an absolute ding-dong of a battle for the final 10 minutes of the session between Mad Al, Pedro Migueles and Phil Varley. Way less than a second between the three of them as they crossed the line, and for most of the final 5 or so laps. Really great racing. So like I said, this is the closeout of the series, so I'll do just a quick run through of the series so far. So where are the orders before we take a quick tour of where we are, which is Dubai Autodrome Grand Prix circuit. So after 3 races of 4, Pedro Migueles is leading the scoreboard. He's had 3 victories so far, so looking like a comfortable victor for this championship, but not necessarily, because Mad Al's had 2 thirds and a 2nd place to put him 31 points behind Pedro. Well, and with 72 points on offer here, Pedro needs to make this win count, because the consistency of Mad Al's been great. 2 thirds and a 2nd. I've got here Charger is in 3rd place, 156 points behind. So once again, Charger could have made it, but I just looked through there. Charger hasn't made it onto tonight's session, so could have won this championship and then wasn't able to make it. Sorry about that, Charger. Vizar is in 4th with BGB British in 5th, Marco in 6th, Babaganoush 7th, Cos 8th, Ellis 9th, Gabsy in 10th, equal with Jan Moolman. Dirk Gretschel's in 12th. We've got FX 13 and Sean Dice, Crystal Beats and Alwyn all in 14th. So a lot of DNFs and partial attendance at the event, which is fine. So where are we? Well, this is the Dubai Autodrome. Quite an unusual track. It's not particularly well known amongst the regular circuits, if you like, your F1 circuits and all those things, but it is very popular with the 24-hour circuit and the GT circuits previously. So it was opened in around 2004, so it's a very modern track. It's only 3.3 miles long. And it's got a couple of long straights with some technical corners. Not a great deal of change in height so there's not a lot of adverse cambers or any particularly challenging corners like we had last week in Spa. But it's still a fantastic track. So I'm just going to find somebody who's coming somewhere near to the start-finish straight, and then let's jump on board with them. I wrestle with my PC. Phil. Nope. Take a little tour through a few of these cars. This is the start. This is into final corner. So let's take a tour around the track. So unfortunately, no beautiful names for these corners, and I don't have the imagination to give you those names, I'm afraid. So start finish straight as we jump in car with Vizar. So this is a start-finish straight into a tight right-hander here, which is T1. Very late braking, slight downhill here as you cut across that, and then take as much curve as you can on the left, keeping the pace as high as possible. This is pretty much flat-out possible lift here, as you can hear, into, that was turn 3, and then into 4, then 5, which tightens and tightens and tightens and tightens into 6. And 7, so that's actually a sequence of about 4 corners there into 7, very short blast straight. This counts as a corner 8, which is a straight line, braking hard into T9, and T9 can be taken in a number of different ways. We'll probably see some interesting overtake moves there as we thunder along the back straight, which is very long, so plenty of opportunity here to get 3 or 4 wide as you plunge into a very sharp right-hander, which is almost a U-turn, nearly complete, onto itself, and then into T11. Again, another corner that, as you can see there, if you take too much on the left curve, the car will rotate and get you out of shape as we turn into T12, which again, very sharp, and could easily catch you out, especially on exit. We go through this very fast left-hander, which is T13, and then brake in a straight line as we can into another U-turn, which is 14. So a lot of heavy braking zones on the track already, as you can tell. So 14 goes on and on and on, as we then exit out and into T15, the penultimate corner. Pit lane entrances on the right hand side there, as we brake hard, cut as much curb as we possibly can, get on as early as we can, because this is the start finish straight. And that's one lap with Vizar. Vizar currently in 4th place in quali. So we're 4 minutes left of quali, looking good so far. So in terms of the spread of play, Pedro's put in a 1:58.371, which is stamping his mark here. So if it were to finish in this quali order, Pedro would take the championship, but anything can happen. And actually 2 of the 4 races this competition already, Pedro has started at the back and rather nonchalantly moved all the way through the pack and taken the lead, rather dramatically so last week, with a very damaged car, scraping it through I think in the final laps. So a handful of corners from the end, Pedro slid through into first and managed to hold off. Maral battling all the way through, so those guys will just reignite their battling from last week, and Phil Varley looks to be in the mix too. That was an absolutely outstanding battle at the end of last week's race, so fingers crossed it happens the same again. Vizar was our pole sitter last week, but had a bit of an up down of a race, and ended up in I think 4th or 5th, but yeah, you can see they're crunching up. The time differences here, 59.1, 59.5, 59.3, so quite compressed. When I first jumped onto the quali here, there was almost every car was in the 2 minutes, so now we're starting to see some separation as we run into the final 3 minutes of quali. So the race format here is a 60-minute race. This is a 20-minute quali session that's just tying out. It's a 60-minute race with a mandatory pit stop, and each car has to change at least 2 tyres. They can pick their own fuel strategies, and we have seen a mix of different strategies here. I'm pleased to see that Dirk Gretschel is back on the server. He joined us 2 races ago and gave us a really great demonstration of running long. So Dirk is the only person 2 weeks ago and today, I can confirm, who's wearing the hard tyres. So Dirk's strategy was to run long, do a very late pit stop strategy, and it nearly paid off for him a couple of races ago. So I think he's going to play the same technique this time, and we'll see how that works out this race. Everyone else is on soft tyres, and looking like they're going to be sprinting in 2 halves of the race. A couple of the races in this series, the final 3 has been pretty much settled in the pit lane. We had one early problem with Vizar when he got caught out in the pit lane, spent at least 30 seconds more than anyone else and lost his lead role there. Likewise, in last week's session, I think we had a swap over of first and second because of their pit strategy and because of the, I guess, their out lap or their in lap that gave them the advantage and made the overtake in the pit lane, which we often see in Formula One these days. Nice to see Jan Mulman back on the server as well, and a few faces as well that are coming in. So we have 12 races tonight, and quali is closing out. I think almost everyone is possibly settling out. No, Phil looks like he's not on a fast lap at the moment. me grabbing a screenshot. Okay, now we're set. Pedro claiming his place on the front row here. Championship leader with Madel, currently second place in the championship, vying for this win. Anything can happen. Phil Varley not vying for the championship, but definitely there to press hard for this, given the performance from last week. And Rick has slid into fourth place, which is really nice, good quality there. And Vizar in fifth, Marco in sixth, Dirk Gretschel seventh, Ben Stevens in eighth, Shane Ellis in 9, Jan Mullman 10, Cos in 11th, and Justin Burley in 12th. Always intrigued to see who goes out for 2 minutes of skidding around the track. Tonight, nobody. I think it's tea break, toilet break, moment to gather your thoughts, moment to drink some water. Well advised. Oh, knew that'd happen. Couple of minutes warm up, shake off some of those pre-race nerves. Looks to me like, mind you, that might change in the race, but looks like everyone has changed to soft tyres, including Dirk Gretschel, unless that changes when we get to race set. So we're about to start the final race of this 4-race series. Been fascinating so far. Pedro's the man to beat, clearly, having won the first 3 races. But we've had many different racing incidents. We've had many people who've been at the front and have ended up very far back. A couple of faces who haven't been in the competition much so far. They're going to be in the mix, just like Rick. We'll see how that works out. Just showboating, right? Just a little pre-race showboat there by Rick. Thanks for that. I might have a little technical issue here with my race room. Hold. No, we're all good. Okay, grid's lining up. Fascinating to see how the race goes. We're on the red lights. Final settings. Pedro on the front row with Madal right next to him, and Phil Varley in second as they kick off and start the race. Looking promising already. Pedro holding the lead, Madal swapping the leads. Very difficult to see from this angle, but we'll get it as soon as they get to the corner. It's Madal from Pedro and Ben Stevens in third with Phil Varley in fourth as we come into the corner. 3 wide there, great braking, sorting each other out. That's great. I'm looking back through the pack, no mistakes being made yet. nice and tight racing at the front, everyone giving each other space. It's absolutely the right thing to do when you have a 60-minute race ahead of you. Plenty of opportunity to take places, plenty of opportunity to make mistakes in the first race and lose all of your opportunity. So good that everyone's keeping a comfortably distance from each other and no one sending it or doing any punts. Great work, always the same in this racing club. I love it. So we're looking at Pedro, who has held the lead after a very stout challenge from Maral into that first corner, with Vizar pressuring right behind Maral in the second yellow AMG. And right behind him is Ben Stevens, who's made a nice jump up the track there. So Ben I have here qualifying in 8th, and he's made himself up to 4th within 2 turns. So that's a fantastic aggressive start from Ben, as Pedro, Maral and Vizar compress at the front. Phil Varley, who was vying for attention in a threesome at the front last week, is only a couple of cars back. As you can see, we've dropped into 2 gaggles of 3 at the moment here, the front 3, and then we've got Ben, Rick Binnesley and Varley really challenging each other for the 4th position here, and the places are swapping so much I can't keep up with it. Fantastic start to the race, looking very, very hot in the first few corners, and keeping very tidy there. Little run wide there from Phil, I think. So far so good, nobody having any problems. Justin seems to have had a little bit of a problem at the back. I think he's dropped back 8 or so seconds, but everyone else is pretty much packed, as we'll see very clearly on this long shot up the start finish straight. All going well. Some fighting at the back, maybe Jan and Sean Ellis and Marco maybe pushing for position at the back, but we're now watching these 3 at the front here, Pedro, Maral and Vizar, who has made a move on Ben Evans and moved through. So it's actually Ben Stevens who dropped into 5th there, and what we're looking at is Pedro, Maral and Vizar in the fight for 1, 2, 3 positions. I'm expecting Phil to join them if he can get away from the group behind, so that we have a 4-way battle at the front. But like I said, long race here, plenty of opportunity to make a mistake here. So just looking back off the rear wing of Pedro to see that he's increasing a little bit of a gap here, just cresting over the top of a second ahead of Maral and Vizar. Of course, Maral had a great finish last week, and he's been one of the most consistent finishers aside from Pedro in this format. So very fast, very competitive, but also extremely consistent, and managing to avoid most of the worst of the incidents or any problems through the first 3 races here. So looking good, keeping Vizar at distance. Rick and Shane Ellis look to be switching positions every other second here as we go back. This is the fight for 7th position between Rick Binnesley, and we're watching Shane Ellis. So far, only 4 minutes. No one's retired. I say this every week with the hope that one week nobody will retire. But it's easy to say that after 4 minutes. Vizar still pressuring Maral at the front here. We'll continue to watch Shane Ellis and Rick Binnesley for a little bit longer, just to watch it as they track through here. Interesting different areas where people can gain time on each other, because it's quite a technical circuit. There are some slow corners, many heavy braking areas, so there's lots of opportunities for people to gain and lose time on each other. As the front 3 start to compress a little bit, let's go inside and watch it from Vizar's point of view in 3rd position. They were a little bit further spread than this, but they seem to have compressed a little bit. But there are many areas where you can gain time on each other, because there are plenty of mistakes to be made. It's a very technical circuit, requires a lot of practice to get that really solid consistency on every corner. Some of these are very much fade braking corners. There's a couple of these, like you brake in a straight line and then you roll off the brake in order to keep that toe in as far as you can, and this one accelerating as early as you can to get as much of a run. This will be a good first person perspective to see how this toe is working, and it's a strong toe, getting stronger towards the end, but you can see you'd need to be a lot closer than that in order to make that really count. So it's not necessarily going to be one of those blast through straights every time. as Mad Al takes the long route round the outside of that corner. Let's take a little look back into watch Marco here, who is in 7th place, but Shane Ellis is behind him and he's pressuring Rick Binnersley in front here. So current running order: Pedro in 1st position, 1.2 seconds on Mad Al, with Vizar in 3rd, Phil Varley 4th, Cos in 5th, Rick Binnersley in 6th, Marco in 7th, Shane Ellis 8th, Jan Moolman 9th, Ben Stevens, blistering start at the start, is now in 10th, and Justin Burley at the back of the pack. And just to confirm, Ben Stevens is wearing the hard tyres, so just realised that Dirk Gretschel joined us for quali and did not make it into the race. That's how quick of brain I am, that 5 minutes into the race I realised there's a man missing. So we're 11 racers here. Dirk Gretschel dropped out, and one of our guys is wearing the hard tyres, but we're tracking Marco as he fights in front of him with Rick Binnersley at the front at the in 7th position. So good going so far. Tracking back to the front, we'll watch Vizar. He seems to be putting a little bit more pressure on Mad Al as well. Times wise, the front 3 guys are sub 2 minutes already. So fastest lap here is Pedro Migueles at the front there on a 1:59.174. Shortly behind him is Mad Al in 2nd place on a 1:59.528, and then Vizar on a 1:59.721. Those are the only guys who've gone sub 2 minutes at the moment, and as you might expect, Phil Varley, who's in 4th, is in 4th in terms of best lap setting. So everything seems to be completely in order. Fastest laps, position on track, and position in the championship. So it's kind of looks too predictable to me. Something definitely is going to happen in tonight's race. Let's track back here. This is Cos defending from Rick Binnersley and not being able to hold him off. So Rick makes his move, slides up the inside and moves into 5th position, but he's a good few seconds behind Phil Varley, who's much further up the road. So the question here is, can Phil Varley in 4th place make the front race a little bit more spicy by closing the gap? He's currently at 4.2 seconds behind. He's not quite matching their best lap pace, but that's just a best lap, it's not an every lap. So if he can bang in 2 minute and 0.078 second laps every time, he'll for sure be fighting at the front of this race. Just checking back here, and I think Cos is having an issue. Yeah, Cos is having more than a little issue. He's decided to check the tread wear on some of the tyres on the wall. That looks like a retirement to me, which is a shame. That's Cos retiring in 11th place, getting very close and personal with the barriers there. Phil Varley not really catching the front 3 group. He's just dropping to around about 5 seconds here. So if they continue at this pace, the front 3 drivers, they're going to be on their own. But Phil is in no man's land at the minute, which is quite difficult because when you're in a group of 3 at the front, you've got each other to push you on mentally and and physically to keep you focused on going as fast as you can. But when you're in this position that Phil's in, it's difficult to keep pushing hard. There's nobody pressuring him from behind. He doesn't have to be, can make mistakes and they won't cost him too much, or little mistakes in corners. It's quite difficult to keep chasing a pack that's 6 or 7 seconds ahead of you, because it's quite difficult to detect where you're making and losing time on them. Tracking back here, Ben has been up and down the pack quite a bit so far, currently in 7th place, and he has moved ahead of Marco and Moolman on his way up into 7th place. So doing a good race here, maybe a little bit unpredictable in terms of his lap times, I'm assuming, and we'll have a look at that in a little while. See Shane Ellis there taking somewhat of a defensive line as he goes through. That's extremely late braking. There was definitely contact there. Then I think Ben hit him on the back, completely accidental, but it looked like he was very much later on the brakes, didn't really find anywhere to go. And you could see there Shane Ellis putting a lot of pressure to return back into position in front. But between the two of them, these look like they could be swapping positions for a while there. Ben looks like he might have had a slightly better run from behind. Let's check that out from his point of view. Sorry, Shane Ellis behind. Not enough to make this T1 braking zone count. It's very difficult, but you can see quite considerably later on the brakes there as they swap for positions. These two really having a ding-dong at the moment. Cos looks to me like, yeah, I'm just checking that he has actually dropped out. Yeah, he has, just making sure of that. So this is back with Shane and Ben. And in the back you can see Jan Mulman starting to put some pressure. So don't forget that Ben Stevens here, who's currently in the red, who's in the red AMG fighting off the blue of Shane Ellis, he's running on the hard tyres. So in 7th position, Ben here on hard tyres with the other guys chasing on soft tyres. If he can continue to hold these three behind him, this could work to his benefit when he does I guess, a late changeover, a late pit change. Keep my eye on this one because it's certainly brewing up as we take a little look from behind from Jan Mulman's position to see whether he can take advantage of any of the mistakes that the guys in front start to make. Always the same with these on-track battles that you get at any time. No matter what you're trying to do, if you're taking defensive lines on each other and trying to avoid being overtaken, you will be losing track time, you will be losing pace around the corners and compromising many of the corners, which gives everybody behind you an advantage and an opportunity to catch up. It's a classic move to watch the watching driver behind sweep in and take two cars in one go, but also can be extremely beneficial if you come up with an informal arrangement with the guy you're racing with to pace each other but not come off the race line. You can actually continue to tow each other around the track a little bit like they do in cycle racing, just to give yourself an advantage. Oh, that was late braking. I could hear some tyres locking up there as we enter T1 for Shane Ellis. Looks like these two will be at this for a while. Just checking at the front, and Visa and Mad Al has taken the lead from Visa. I missed it. My apologies again. It looks to me like we've had a little changeover at the front, but I'm not sure whether that's going to always be the case. Mad Al has taken first position with Visa in second place, and it's Pedro who must have made some on-track mistake. He's not lost too much time. He's 3 seconds behind Visa, so no real change in the top three, except the positions have changed at the moment, but actually they're still comfortably ahead with Phil Varley 4.3 seconds behind Pedro. So my apologies, I missed that. Pedro must have stepped off the track or something and lost some pace, and the two guys behind him just slid through. So what was second and third is now first and second, with Mad Al currently taking the lead. My maths isn't that good to do this on the fly, but with a 2-position gap between Mad Al and Pedro, would this make a difference to the championship? Their gap in terms of points is... Should never start a sentence you can't finish. 31 we said, wasn't it? 31 points the difference between Pedro and Mad Al. And looking down here, third position gets you 58 points on 71, which is only 13. That's not going to be enough of a difference. Mad Al needs to see Pedro drop much further down the track here in order for him to win this championship right from under the nose of Pedro. Switching back for a second, Jan Mulman absolutely made that move stick perfectly. Dives up the inside of Shane Ellis on the final corner. That was really, really precise in order to take it, but you can see he's not dropping Shane, who's right on his tail here as we break into T1. These three are grouping up. There's no separating them at the moment, and you can see Shane stuffs one up the inside but backs out of it, and that's great driving from Jan, who holds it together. Looks to me like Shane might have had a problem there. Either he's had an issue or he has retired. That could be a retirement for Shane as we now watch Jan Mulman hunting down Ben Stevens in front. and Vizar closing in on Madal at the front. Let's just check that at the front here. Let's go take a look at Madal. You can see Pedro behind. He's not catching as it stands at the moment. The gap continues to stretch out, so Pedro might just be taking a little time to get back up to rhythm here. He was putting in some great times. Just checking on the fastest lap times, nothing's changed here. They're still in the same order as they were before with their lap times. No pit stops yet. We are only 16 minutes into this race, and so far we've had changes of place at the front. Our pole sitter Pedro, who led for the first I'd say 7 or 8 laps of this race, has slipped down to third, probably some on-track issue he's had, which has allowed Madal, who qualified in second, to slide through into first place, now holding Vizar. I can't help but feel like they're pacing now. Vizar's not getting dropped, but he's also not making any particularly aggressive challenges on the lead. As long as they're ahead at this stage, I think he's probably just keeping a watching brief, and as I say that, he closes to within a gnat's whisker of his boot. So maybe I'm not seeing that right, but it looked to me like Vizar was just quite comfortable sitting in second for this phase of the race, probably just watching Madal's driving lines, watching the technique, and I could be seeing Pedro slightly closing the gap there, as Pedro is now only 1.7 off the boot of Vizar. Phil Varley unfortunately getting dropped by these three, as he is now 8 seconds adrift of the front three, so it looks to me like this is the race definitely to be watching at the moment. Madal desperately needs something to be happening to Pedro if he's going to take this championship, but as it stands, looking like he's in control of the race. Just checking back here on Pedro, let's just take a little look at some of his lap times just to see where the mistake was made. Running back, 159, 159, 159, 159, and that's just incredible. And then a 206. Yeah, he's dropped 7 seconds on lap number 7, so clearly some kind of on-track issue. But what amazing consistency! All of those 159s, lap after lap after lap. And you can see when we check Vizar, who is now right on the tail of Madal, you can see much more consistently in the 2 minutes with a 159 there, just the 159. But looks to me like Pedro still has the pace for this. Vizar's probably going to look for this, I'd have thought, and put one up the inside, but no, Madal has nothing. Gives him the space. Definitely was courteous on track, but interesting line there from Vizar. Probably compromised on the exit of the previous corner, but pretty much cut the corner there. And then let's take a little look at Madal's timings. So Madal, yeah, a lot more in the 159s at the start of this race, fell into a comfortable 2-minute lap time, which is really, as you can see visibly on the screen, giving Pedro the opportunity, who can lap, I'd say, more consistently in the 159s, to start to bring himself back onto these 2 lead cars. We've had some pit changes. Justin Burley already made his pit stop, currently running 9th out of 11, 2 retirees, but also Phil Varley taken an early pit stake, but he's had a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which is always a great way to cheer yourself up. A little early for pit stops, unless you're going to go hard tyres. So a 20-minute stop in a 60-minute race leaves you with either going on to soft tyres and having a compromised finish, which it just does look like both Phil Varley and Justin Burley have had to make that decision. They both re-entered the track on softs. Our only driver on hard tyres, Ben Stevens, is currently sitting comfortably in 5th here, which could turn out to be higher up. But having said that, Ben has Jan Mulman all over the back of him as Jan continues to apply pressure to try to take 5th place from Ben Stevens. Let's see what that looks like from the back of Ben's car. Whoa, that's very Larry there from Jan Mulman. definitely sorting the car out in the corners there and not uncomfortable with losing traction on all 4 tyres is Jan Moorman. So that's interesting. He's kind of investigating different ways that he might be able to get his car into an overtaking position, but it looks to me like he's, oh dear, there you go, Vizar, we saw it earlier, Vizar's just picked up a slowdown penalty for track limit abuse. Pretty much saw him cutting a corner previously. He'll pick that slowdown penalty and he'll have to perform that immediately. And as we watch, Pedro now hounding the back of Vizar. So races happening all over the circuit at the moment as we watch from the back of Vizar, but let's take a look at the back of Madal's car to see if Vizar can defend from Pedro down this back straight here. Phil Varley now also getting a track abuse penalty, and Pedro, what an outstanding move there. He put himself on the outside of that braking point, managed to keep the car well and truly under control, and then made it onto the inside of the follow-up corner. That's just supreme car control, very difficult to do that. And if you're Madal, you got to be thinking, how am I going to hold this guy off? Maybe Vizar will get a little rush of blood as he's only 0.2 seconds off the back of Pedro. No one likes to be overtaken on the outside, right? So Madal showing him the door, the inside there for a very wide exit, which could be an opportunity for Pedro to pull some pace up. Let's take a little look inside of Vizar's car as we see Pedro doing slight drifts around the corner, but keeping it all in good shape. Fantastic racing at the front here. It's so difficult to keep this close to each other in sim racing. Maybe a little bit easier in real racing. You've got a few more different signals. Oh, there's no space there. Well, there is space, but he's not putting his car in it. That's great stuff. It's much harder to judge space, spatial awareness in a sim than it is in real life. So it's real credit to guys who are able to race this close and this competitively when you're really actually only looking at a 2D plane. It's really very difficult skill to get right, because it can ruin your race and the guy in front's race if you're a little bit too leery. So fantastic to watch. Rick Binnersley now in 4th position, so with some changes behind. Rick has currently made himself into, so what's happened? Oh yeah, of course Phil made his pit stop, so we're now looking at Rick Binnersley 26 seconds off the back of these 3 as we continue to track these 3 drivers at the front here. Madal, Pedro and Vizar having a great battle. That's definitely looking like contact to me. A little bit of a punt. See if Vizar gives him the place back. Looks like he's going to give the place back. That was definitely contact. Yeah, Vizar doing the right thing. And that's a really great example of what RWB is all about. We just talked about it. It's extremely difficult to drive nose to tail in sim racing because of how difficult it is to be able to keep that kind of proximity in a simulator. Both pitting, just to cut myself off there. Pedro and Vizar pitting. It looks to me like Madal has stayed out, so here's that undercut moment with 25 minutes of the race gone, 35 minutes left. Yeah, just to go back to that, just great to see Vizar. He had contact, he recognised he had contact, he rolled off the throttle and he allowed Pedro to retain the place in front of him, because the most important thing here is that we're racing clean, and we're racing fair, and we're racing for position, but we're always doing it in that order. So there's no point in taking a position of somebody when you've made contact like that. That's not fair and it's not clean, and it ends up with bitterness and just not a good club spirit at all. So I can't think that was a better example of what RWB stands for. So great racing there from the guys. As we now watch Pedro exiting the pits. So Rick Binnersley has inherited 2nd place, 30 seconds behind Al, as Pedro exits the pit with Vizar somewhere behind him. Vizar having a nightmare now. He's just picked up a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which is going to cost him significantly here, which that's a real shame. Vizar needs to, I think, spend a good evening practicing the pits here, because I remember having a discussion with him about he made a pit mistake in one of the earlier races, not speeding, just not knowing whether the guys were going to make the pit change or not, and losing a good 20 seconds, getting frustrated with it. So hint to Vizar, practice pits. Oh god, it's so boring, isn't it, to say that? But now Vizar's all over the place with a slow down penalty. More track limit abuse there from Vizar, so I think he might be getting a little upset with himself. In fourth position, was fighting for the lead, absolutely, and Mad Al looks like he is sticking out. So Mad Al currently sticking himself out, as we see Rick Binnersley pretty much in thin air there, 32 seconds behind Mad Al and only 10 seconds ahead of Pedro, who's now currently in third position. So this changeover with Vizar having to do a drive-through penalty and picking a couple of slowdowns will not do anything for Mad Al's challenge for the championship, if you like, because it's basically there's nobody between him and Pedro once Rick has made his pit change. So Mad Al at the front, still to make his pit. Rick Binnersley in second, still to make his. Pedro has made a pit change. Vizar has made a pit change. Marco has not, and neither has Ben Stevens. Jan Millman has come out after his pit stop on hard tyres. So he's changing his tyre set to see whether he can get any extra advantage. But at this point, you're pretty much halfway through the race. So maybe he has a preference. Marco picks down a slow down penalty. It's very easy to get track limit abuse on this track because there is no kitty litter. There's no sand pits or anywhere for you to completely lose it, or even any grass for you to go skewing off into a wall. It's just tarmac everywhere. So sometimes it offers itself up for abuse, and it's very easy to take that by cutting a corner or by hitting the loud pedal too quickly and going too wide on a corner. Just checking who we're watching tracking. That is Phil Varley tracking with Mad Al. So Phil is in 8th position, considerably off the lead here. But just to say, in last week's session at Spa, these two guys were fighting all the time at the front of the track. So Phil definitely on pace, just having a bit of a nightmare evening, I guess, on this particular circuit. But Mad Al's definitely not dropping him, and the question is, when is Mad Al going to choose to take his pit? Pedro is 40 seconds adrift of Mad Al as it stands, definitely not taking it this lap. And Ben Stevens, who we said earlier was in 5th position on his hard tyres, is now in 4th position and has still not pitted on his hard tyres. He has Vizar behind him, but a good 6 seconds behind. I'm expecting Vizar will probably pick that gap up. 9 races tonight, so plenty of points on offers, as we've had 2 retirements, one from Shane Ellis and earlier in the race from Cos, who saw the wall too quickly. Take a little look at Mad Al's times over these last few laps. Yeah, you can see there's definitely some time degradation there. He's now in the 2:01s, and you have to fancy that if he continues at that rate of timing, he's going to get himself caught out here. So we're exactly at the halfway point in this race. It would seem obvious if he's not watching his own times that he's got to start thinking about when he's going to make that pit change. What was 40 seconds between Mad Al and Pedro is now something like 36. So it's closing quite quickly. Pedro's obviously on the soft tyres as he's come out of the pits. Only 3 cars yet to change tyres. You know, given Phil's pace, and you can see there Madal's taken the chance. He's going to make his pit change this time round, so let's just track Rick Binnersley, who's currently holding second place, to see whether he chooses to pit, because if he does, we're back with the Pedro Madal battle, and we'll see how the pit change has interfered with their pretty close racing at the front there. Vizar collecting his thoughts, I guess, and returning back to the battle, and has just moved up to 4th place. So Vizar now returning back into the race as Rick goes into the, is that the penultimate corner? Nope, that's the final corner. So Rick choosing not to make his pit change, and Madal currently still in the pit as we watch both Rick and Pedro come through. So as Madal returns, he has lost position to Pedro, who is going to be a number of seconds up the road here after that pit change. So maybe just stayed out too long on the tyres, or couldn't find his earlier rhythm, but it looks to me like Pedro has taken advantage of that pit exchange and has come out quite comfortably ahead, in fact 10 seconds ahead of Madal after that exchange, and expecting Rick Binnersley to pit very shortly, and the battle at the front will resume, but in the opposite order that it was before. And surprise, surprise, these are in 4th position, ready to inherit 3rd when Rick Binnersley takes his pit change. Pedro already pacing Rick in front here for taking the lead, but I'd call that swarming all over the back of Rick into that corner there. That's off the back straight. So Rick's currently ceding 2nd place there, still to make his pit change, so currently out of sequence, if you like, as is Ben Stevens, currently out of sequence in 5th place. But Ben's running the hard tyres, so we expected him to run long on this first stint. He's been on them for 33 minutes, so maybe a few more, maybe 2 or 3 more laps, and he'll start to come in, or consider coming in. Remember that also Jan Moolman, who is behind Ben in 6th position, he's also running the hard tyres. So a couple of different techniques or tactics being run in the middle of the field there. So Pedro currently holding the lead, a second ahead of Rick. Just checking my scoreboard there. Yeah, a second ahead of Rick, who's just come into the pit lane. So we're looking at Pedro Migueles ahead of Madal, ahead of Vizar. Let battle commence again. Let's see how Pedro's times are going as he's after his pit exchange. So you can see there 2 minutes 38 for the pit and 1:59s, and then bang, a 1:58.84, which is comfortably the fastest lap now. A good 0.7 seconds quicker than Madal's fastest time. So Pedro now putting the boot down. And you compare those times pre-pit stop and post-pit stop to Madal's time, then you'll see where the difference is. So Madal made a slightly longer pit changeover, actually a good 3 or 4 seconds longer in the pit lane, so that didn't help him much. But in the lap previous to it, and the lap previous to that, so 15 and 14, Madal's dropping a good 4 or 5 seconds in those 2 laps before his pit, which probably is why he's returned to a 9-second gap on Pedro. So just timing of the pit exchange, it looks to me like it could be that this pays back to Madal late in the race. It could be that Pedro's slightly older soft tyres will start to slow him down in the final 3 or 4 laps. I hope so for the big finish, and that Madal gets to put in better consistent times towards the end of the race. But you can definitely see where the cost was there of that pit exchange. Everyone has pitted, So Ben Stevens, who was our last runner non-pitting, has moved himself over to the soft tyres, but unfortunately, because of his out of position, has now dropped to 8th position. So running through here, Pedro in the lead, good 10-11 seconds on Madal. Vizar is 24 seconds adrift behind, so 1, 2, 3, who were bumper to bumper for some period at the start of the race, have now split considerably. But Rick Binnersley here in 4th position looks like he's not giving up the chase, so he's only 11 seconds behind Vizar. And Jan, who's had a good start to this race, remembering that just looking back at the qualifiers here, who are the big winners and losers, Pedro was qualifying in 1st position and in 1st. Madal qualified 2nd is 2nd. Phil Varley is probably one of the bigger losers out of this race so far, having qualified nicely in 3rd, but now running in 7th. Rick Binnersley 4th and 4th, so he's at parity. Vizar is currently running in 3rd, but qualied in 5, so Vizar's on the up. Marco in 6th, so he's at parity as well. And then Dirk Gretschel turned up for the quali and then decided not to race. Shame. Ben Stevens made a P8, currently in P8. And then we've got Burley there, who was in P12, has made it up to 9. So there's some good progress there. Cos has retired and Shane Ellis has retired as well. Let's check back here as Marco is putting the pressure a little bit on Jan Mulman in front of him. So Marco currently running in 6th and Jan in 5th. So this is the battle for P5. And it's been creeping up. You can see, left the timers on the right there. You can see the difference in the times of the races slightly further back, but how that accrues over the race is what really matters. To see Jan staying in the middle of the road there for that part and then covering himself. An extremely late braking manoeuvre there by Marco. Can he make it stick? No, I think that's covered. Looks at the switchback, but no opportunity, and the door is shut there as well. A little wiggle in front, obviously having some issues with grip, and that's given Marco an opportunity, but it is on the outside, giving lots and lots of room on the inside there, which maybe could have given a little bit less there to give himself a bit more pace, but that's very gentlemanly as Marco piles on the pressure even further to Jan Mulman. So we're watching the battle for P5 at the moment. That's going to be contact, and sure enough, there was a little tap there, just a hello, I'm here tap, which was all taken in good grace. No place has changed, and that happens. Much better to punt directly on the back of the driver in front than to do the pit maneuver and end up rotating both cars. That's a good exit. You could see he got much better grip, got on the gas very quickly here, so you've got to fancy Marco to have a go at this. I'm surprised that Jan isn't making a defence, but maybe he knows more than I do about there is the defence. How little toe there is along the start-finish straight there, and that was slow in and fast out for Marco. Seemed that he was losing that corner, but he was much quicker on the accelerator, and he's caught it all back through that sequence 3, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 there. Very frustrating corner, that one. Waiting and waiting and waiting for it to sharpen so that you can reapply the accelerator. Very wide, but again you can convert that into a late apex, which he does. And Jan now on the back straight as we watch him make distance. So yeah, very different line taken into that corner, exiting onto the back straight there. Jan going extremely wide, and that can happen when you brake too late. But able to catch it up, like doing a J turn, if you like, or J corner on that. Really interesting how he managed to then launch himself out of that corner and keep comfortably ahead of Marco on the straight. But Marco's definitely not giving this fight up. He wants this place, and that was the door wide open there. Marco slides through with, I think, Jan outbroke himself and said, after you, sir. Which, of course, Marco took. So at the front we have Pedro gapping at around 10-11 seconds. They look like they're consistent at the front too. Vizar 27 seconds behind, and Rick Binnersley in fourth, 20 seconds behind. Those are the four guys currently on lap 20 as we're tracking back here with Marco in fifth and Rick Binnersley, who has been in fourth for some time in this race, just probably feels like he's on his own. So 20 minutes or thereabouts left of this race. Only two retirements as we track. Is this an issue? Just checking. Phil Varley in the pits here for the second time. Yeah, for the second time. Justin Burley exiting the pits. Maybe they had contact, but yeah, this is Phil Varley's tour of the pit lane race. I think this is his second pit stop. Took a very early pit, so maybe going for a two-stopper, which is ill-advised with an hour race. And it's a shame. You could see Phil has the pace here, certainly in that first exchange at the start of the race, and certainly in last week's racing, but it's just not found his rhythm tonight. So let's take a minute to see how Pedro does this. Pedro's last lap, the only driver under 2 minutes on his last lap, and he's definitely fastest lap holder at the moment on 1 minute 58.775 seconds. So unless something disastrous happens, this would be a very well-deserved championship win for Pedro, who has been mercurial throughout the four races, coming from the back on two of them, and in this case leading from the front and defending his lead so far, although there's plenty of laps left. What is this? This is a 2-minute lap with 17 minutes to go, and make that around about 9 laps, 8 or 9 laps depending on where we are. That's plenty of turns to make a mistake, but one thing I think we've probably picked up from the last 4 races that we've been watching Pedro is he doesn't make so many mistakes. So it's really enjoyable to watch, just the consistency with which Pedro is able to put the car around the track here, and also hold the car control when it's losing traction. So we've seen many times when he's been braking extremely hard, car's getting a little out of shape mid-corner, has been able to collect it and maintain momentum, which is very difficult to achieve. Madal slightly getting dropped here, 12 seconds adrift now, so his times are not picking up. Justin Burley has been lapped. Phil Varley has re-entered after his second pit stop. Jan Mollman's on hard tyres, running on a different set for the second phase of this race, but we saw earlier in that battle with Marco, didn't seem to give him what he wanted. He outbroke and let Marco through. And the question here is Vizar being caught up by Rick Binnersley? So it's an 8-second gap between Rick Binnersley in fourth here and Vizar in third. Keep an eye on that just to see whether Rick is actually gaining here. Definitely at that phase of the race where everyone is pretty much spaced out, found their own groove. But what I have picked up is it often changes in the final 5 or 10 laps of a race as mistakes start to get made, people start to find a different pace, tyres start to wear out at different pace. It looks to me like Jan Moolman is having a pit change there, so very quick pit stop for Jan. Saw him popping in. Not sure whether he'll retain that 7th place from Phil Varley, who's just exiting the pit straight there. So let's just track Jan. He's exiting. Phil Varley is coming along. And you can see Jan Moolman makes it, but gets out of the way because I'm pretty sure that was Mad Al coming through there. So blue flags and great driving there from Jan, allowing Mad Al to not lose any momentum. But having said that, Mad Al is now 13 seconds adrift of Pedro, so it looks to me like Pedro's really just starting to gap now. But Rick is sub 8 seconds on Visa, so flicking around here. So just interesting to see how Rick's times are going. He's 2 seconds over the last 3 laps with a 1:59, his best in lap 19. So maybe he's got the bit between his teeth here with Visa 8 seconds up the road from him, putting in a couple of 2:01s. So you can actually see a slight fading away of times here from Visa, who earlier in the race was was in the 2 minutes very early 2 minutes, and was putting in a number of 1 minutes. So it's possible here that Rick has got the bit between his teeth with 13 minutes to go, and might actually start to put some pressure onto Visa as Visa laps one of the back markers there. Take a little look at Phil Varley, currently running in 8th and tracking down Jan Moolman. So Phil, as we saw, very, very difficult race for Phil. Lots of 2:01s, but the odd occasional nasty time there and a couple of pit changes. But yeah, Phil starting to look like he might have an interest in taking Jan Moolman here for 7th place. Not all the racing always happens at the front. Actually, some of the most fascinating battles happen mid-pack or rear pack as drivers pressure each other for all kinds of positions on the circuit. Very fast section this. It looked to me like Jan Moolman really linked that up nicely there, hitting every apex, just riding the curbs, and seems to have a little bit more of a smooth line there. But great recovery from Phil Varley to still keep that gap, and in fact possibly even reduce it through that sequence. This is a turn into the back straight, lots of different exit points and entry points depending on how you want to run that line. Phil too far back from Jan to make this stick, but this is the closest battle currently on circuit. Does feel like Phil is starting to unsettle Jan a little bit here. That's a line we've seen Jan take very wide there, very squirmy, and lost a lot of pace. Careful driving from Phil not to make any contact, which is great, but you can see Jan's struggling a little bit to keep us together. That's an undercut, but closes the door there. Jan making sure that was not a gap that was offered. Yeah, crazy cars these. This is the 1995 DTM C-Class AMG Mercedes, widely regarded as one of the formative cars that actually started the whole touring car movement, and then transferred into DTM as we now know it. Around about 480 brake horsepower, rear wheel drive, very little driving aids, no traction control, no braking assist, and very stiff, very evenly balanced cars. Have a tendency to oversteer, and that's a perfect example of it, as he gets a tank slapper, well avoided by Phil Varley. Jan succumbed to the pressure from Phil, and the question is, how do you respond? First and foremost, if you've made a tank slap, you've got to focus on the driver in front of you and try to regain that position. So Jan probably feeling like that was a frustrating move to make there. But yeah, the car's very evenly balanced, slight tendency to oversteer, but very little. It's an extremely well balanced car. Not a very friendly car to curbs because of its extremely stiff setup, as with all DTM cars and all series. You can see he's getting a little bit of a wiggle on there, probably putting a little bit too much gas down in some of those corner exits. Pedro rather serene at the front, I have to say. 9 minutes left of this, the fourth race in our series of 4, and he is quite comfortably ahead of Madal now, pulling out a 14-second gap, with Vizar 30 seconds behind. And as we were talking earlier, Rick Binnersley closing that gap to now under 4 seconds on Vizar. So the question is, does Rick have enough in order to make this happen? Just checking on the chat there. Thanks for filling us in. It really does help from my position. So Dirk Gretschel, I mentioned earlier, came into qualifying, looked like he was going to get a good position on the qualifying board there, and then obviously had a problem because his Steam VR crashed in the warm-up. So he was set to race, but he had a technical problem, and you just can't count on that. You know, it can happen to anybody. So shame, sorry about that, Dirk. That's really frustrating, especially as you look like you're going to be very competitive. Cos also reported that he killed his engine when he hit the barrier. It did look like he got quite intimate with the wall, I have to say, so that's a shame. But yeah, it really helps when I get feedback on how people have actually managed to not get in the race or have got unstuck. Thank you. Yeah, this is Rick's chance, I think. Let's do a little bit of maths here. With 7 minutes to go of this race, 2-minute laps. He looks like he's bringing that back around about 3/4 of a second to a second a lap. It looks extremely difficult that he's going to both catch and pass Vizar with what looks like 4 laps remaining of this race. But 4 laps does equate to around about 4 seconds, and it has this really positive effect on the driver behind. As they see the gap decreasing, it becomes a center of focus, and you can really drive towards that gap, and then it seems like you're a little bit more automatic with your own driving. The converse is happening with the guy in front, who can see you in the rearview mirrors getting bigger and bigger, and who can check on their overlay. The gap is getting smaller and smaller, and they conversely stop focusing on how they're driving and start focusing on how you're driving. And it's incredible the way psychology of racing happens like this. We often see it. You end up driving in the rear view mirror and not actually focusing on your own race line at all here. Rick cuts this gap down to 3.4 down the start finish straight. Has he got it? Can he get the podium position? I always guess wrong. I'm going to guess no. So let's see if he makes this move and actually cuts this gap down. So we're into the final phase of the race here, 5 minutes left. I'd say, had the pleasure of watching Pedro racing this tournament. He's been a very, very impressive leader of the championship throughout, and leader of many races throughout. Madal not letting him get away with it lightly. has been pressing throughout the competition. So remember, Mad Al had 2/3 and a second position, currently looking like he's going to take second position in this race as well, which does really go to show that, you know, unless you're racing against someone like Pedro who can win every week, 2/3 and 2 seconds would definitely get you a championship in many cases. Unfortunately, Charger wasn't able to join us tonight. He had 2/4 and a 6th, putting him in the 3rd place of the championship. But Vizar has been one of the guys who's shown a huge pace. You know, we know Vizar is very quick, but struggling sometimes with consistency. As there you go, that's a back marker letting him through. And Rick Binnersley now 2.6 seconds from Vizar. Let's see if my prediction comes true. Turning into the final corner here, into the home straight, and this is probably the only on-track battle here as I run through quickly. We have Pedro in the lead, Mad Al second, Vizar third, Rick Binnersley fourth, Marco nearly a minute behind Rick, with Ben Stevens behind Marco by 27 seconds. Phil Varley is pressuring Ben Stevens as we speak. I'm going to take a little peek at that just to see how we're getting on here. Let's take a look at the back of Ben Stevens' car. Remember that Ben Stevens ran with hard tyres for quite a lot of the race and then did a late pit stop to come on to softs. Has regained 6th place, which is where did he qualify? He qualified in 8th, so that's a couple of place improvement, but he's going to struggle, I think, to keep Phil Varley away. Remembering that Phil Varley actually qualified 3rd in this race and has had a bit of a dog's dinner of the race tonight. Apologies, Rick. But still putting the pressure on here. There you go, wide open. Phil takes that gap. Great work, and we'll return to the front to see how Rick is doing, currently at 2.4 seconds behind Vizar. 3 minutes less of this race. Still can't see it happening. Oh, that looked like he took a lot of corner there. Couldn't see whether he was losing control of it. Sorry, Ben didn't like that. And he tries to take the place back off Phil Varley. So these two are having a end of race challenge. Let's just track this to see whether Ben can recover that place. This is a battle for 6th position. Rick currently closing to about 2 seconds, but you can see here Phil takes a defensive line and Ben can't find anything to answer that with, so it could be that this continues, but we're going to return to see whether the gap is closing between Vizar and Rick Binnersley. When you look at this camera, it doesn't look like it's possible. With 2 minutes left, Vizar has to make a disastrous mistake in order to allow Rick Binnersley through. But it was a good late challenge, I'd say, from Rick as we go into probably one of the last laps here. 1 minute 57 out. I'm checking Pedro. He is midway around the circuit. So we're closing out here, a minute left. This looks like we are watching the champion, the season winner. He's won every single race. He's led many of the races. He came from the back of the grid to the front of the grid on 2 occasions as he enters his final laps. Got to say, Pedro has been extremely difficult to beat in this tournament. Cars and tracks suit him. It may be that Pedro is this pacey in every format, but just great to see him. Is really good racing, and Mad Al has been so consistent throughout this tournament, snatching 2/3 and 2 seconds by the look of it. These are struggling a little bit with consistency in this championship, extremely fast, but having some issues on track, but mainly, let's be honest, issues in the pit lane, which are very easy to practice. Rick Binnersley having a great race here. Now bringing that down to 1.3 seconds, but I really can't see how he can do anything with that. This is the final lap between these two guys, as Pedro is already halfway around the lap. We saw some really interesting racing early on. Fantastic in this one. I was really hoping that it was going to be a 3 or 4 way at the front right to the end, but it seemed like they all kind of set into their own groove as we got into the 3/4 mark in this race, and the pattern became as each one kind of paced each other or stretched each other out. But a very creditable win by the look of it. Switch over and watch the final cars come through for this, the final race of this 4 series. Had some fantastic racing, really enjoyed commentating it, and it's just been great fun to watch all of the guys perform at such a high level to make sure that it isn't just carnage on every corner. We started in Suzuka and we went to Road America, visited Spa-Francorchamps, so we've had some fantastic circuits, and we've finished here in Dubai Autodrome, arguably a really technical circuit, as Pedro enters into the final corner to take this final race and see him take 4 wins out of 4 to conclusively win this championship. Well done, Pedro. Fabulous racing. Mad Al also a really good racing, just been solid throughout, very fast, very good starter, great off the grid, very good at wheel to wheel when it's compressed, seems very calm in those situations. Vizar, practice those pits, Vizar. Really good, so fast, such quick times, and very good car control. Has come in 3rd, dropped off in this race, had some issues early on, but had some great racing also. It looks to me like Mad Al, obviously it will be Pedro for the championship, Mad Al for 2nd, and I'm going to guess Vizar's looking like he's going to come in 3rd for this championship, which is well deserved. Been great. Rick Binnersley here in 4th. Shame we didn't see Rick earlier in the championship. He probably would have been fighting at the front with the rest of the guys. And Marco taking a solid 5th place here. Looks very slow. Spread out, so we had 8 finishers from the 11 guys that started the race. I've already had a couple drop off the server. Really good finish to the tournament. I really enjoyed it. It's been great watching everybody in the same car, leaving only the driver, their tactics and technique to it. So you see the scores there, you see the final race winners. Pedro Migueles wins both the fastest lap and is the race winner and the championship winner. So congratulations, Pedro. Fantastic. I didn't realize, but Phil Varley had picked up a 30-second penalty, which is a shame. But it's been great commenting on the whole of this series, and thanks for listening. I'm taking 2 weeks holiday, but I'll be back on Friday nights after that to see what's left. If it's Wreckfest, I'll still do the commentary for Wreckfest because that'll be fun. But I'll leave you. Don't race on your own through the week. Just jump into an RWB server, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.